Hey, y'all from Tennessee. Welcome to the State and Beal podcast. This is the place where we celebrate Tennessee, the volunteer state, the Big Bend state, the hog and hominy state. On this show, we love Tennessee from State Street in Bristol to Beale Street in Memphis, with apologies to Mountain Cities. I'm sorry, Mountain City, we love you. My name is Toby Sells. I've called this great state home most of my life, except for that brief stint in North Carolina when I was like 4 or 5. And I've been a newspaper in Tennessee for a long time, too. So I've had a front row seat to Tennessee all those years, and there is still more I want to see and to share. On State and Beal, we'll talk about people and places, food, the outdoors, crafts, home and garden, fashion, events, and anything that makes Tennessee, Tennessee. We will not talk about politics, religion, or money. There are plenty of other places to get all of that. Well, that's what the show is about, and so if you like that, then you found the right place. I hope State and Beal makes you love to live in Tennessee, or if you don't live here, it makes you long to be in Tennessee. I got some good Tennessee music to share with you this week. This is some fresh stuff from Life in Grooveland. It's a brand new single called Be Thou My Vision. It's from a forthcoming record titled The Hymnal. You know, it's an amazing reminder that there's so much more to Nashville than Music Row. All right, now Nashville is a world-class city for music. It draws musicians from all over the world to sing a song or beat a drum or saw on a fiddle. And they bring their influences and styles with them. And they play them, even if they don't fit in at Tootsie's Orchid Lounge. Life in Grooveland is a project by an amazing drummer and my buddy, Justin Amaral. He's a classically trained musician, but he's also a Nashville music veteran. He's played in all kinds of bands and for all kinds of artists. But you know, Justin just kind of vibrates with this optimism and positivity. It's so lovely and just kind of contagious. Go pal around with him sometime and you'll know what I'm talking about. Thanks for the music, Justin. If you have some Tennessee music you wouldn't mind to let us use on the show, I would sure be much obliged to you. Send a link to Toby at stateandbeal.com and I'll get your stuff on right here, and I might even send you a Tennessee quarter in the mail. Head over to stateandbeal.com where you can read even more great Tennessee stuff, and there you can drop me your email address and I'll keep you up to date on what's going on with State and Beal. And I hope to soon have some great Tennessee themed merch in an online store over there pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. But for now, if you would please follow the show wherever you get podcasts for a brand new episode every week. This week, we're heading down in the holler and back in time to a true Tennessee tradition. Then we'll come back to the present with a warm belly, a smile on our face, and a jar in our hand. We're talking about moonshine on today's show. Chad Hunt is the master distiller at Roaring River Distillery in Gainesboro, Tennessee. That's a beautiful little town just a few miles north of Cookeville in Middle Tennessee. Even though Gainesboro is a bit off the beaten path, Chad told me that tons of new folks are finding their way to the city and to the distillery. He works with his mom and dad. Some of those new visitors are thanks to Chad's appearance on the Discovery Channel show Master Distiller. It was awesome, and we'll talk about that a little later in the show. We'll also just talk about Gainesboro, Jackson County, the Upper Cumberland Plateau, Cummins Falls, the Roaring River, and, of course, about running illegal moonshine liquor. Enough of the intro, let's get after it, folks. Chad Hunt is master distiller at Roaring River Distillery, right down there in the heart of Gainesboro, Tennessee. That's Jackson County. Welcome to the show, Chad.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Maybe first, before we start talking about moonshine, maybe you can tell us about Gainesboro and Jackson County.
Well, Jackson County, like you said, it's a real small town. A lot of people have started coming from the bigger cities like Nashville, Knoxville, and all around, starting to get away from the big cities and start exploring these smaller towns. And Jackson County is definitely one of them, and Gainesboro there. There's quite a bit to do. Like I said, there's a lot of good restaurants that are gaining a lot of notoriety. a lot of history in the area and a lot of nature for sure.
Yeah, the whole downtown is on the National Register of Historic Places. I read that this morning. That's pretty cool, and it's a gorgeous, gorgeous downtown there. So on a Friday or Saturday night, if I were to come up there and say, Chad, show us around, what would we do? What would you show us?
Well, most people when they come up there on the weekends, they're coming up to, of course, eat at one of our fine restaurant establishments that we have there, and then of course you get to walk around town. You can visit the museum there on the square, see the old courthouse, and of course, like our distillery, we're open on the weekends, so we're located in the old Ford dealership building. So that building's been there since the late 1800s, and it was a Ford dealership all the way up to about 1970. So there's a lot of history in that building. A lot of the locals come in and they actually point out where their first car was sitting out on the showroom floor when they purchased it.
Other things, I was looking around on the Jackson County tourism websites. You've got Cummins Falls State Park, which is up there, which I think is something that local folks have known about for a long time, and then they finally made it a state park. You ever head out to Cummins Falls?
Oh yeah, so that was definitely a local hotspot and was not very well known. And then once the state took over it, of course, they developed it into a park. And now, when you go there on the weekends during the summer, that place is packed with out of state tags and people going down into the gorge to swim. And it kind of ruined it for the locals because it used to be our little secret, but now it's well known and it stays busy. But it is definitely a beautiful waterfall.
Now let's talk about moonshine. How did you get into making moonshine?
Well, I get asked that question a lot, and it runs in my blood, I guess, or I suppose, because my great grandfather spent 2 years in Alabama prison for making it. So kind of
Wow.
carried over throughout the generations over to me. And I started off, I always tell people I started off drinking it,
Yep.
got good at drinking it. So, and then me and my parents, we started bootlegging it back when we lived in Nashville. We'd get it and take it to Nashville and sell it to the city slickers there. And
That's
then,
amazing. So you guys were actually illicit moonshine runners,
oh, yeah,
right back before it was even legal.
right. So we started off that way and decided, well, we've drank a lot of it. We know what it's supposed to taste like. And know if we make something that's good, we can sell it. So we decided to take middleman out, start making it ourselves. And the employment opportunities around this area is not really that great, and jobs are kind of scarce. So we decided, well, if we're going to have a decent job, we're going to have to create that job for ourselves. And so we decided to go legal and start the distillery. That way, instead of having mattress money, as they call it, we'd actually have money that we could do stuff with.
Money in the actual bank over there. Uh,
Right.
where did y'all get those original recipes?
So the recipe that we use is just a traditional Upper Cumberland recipe. So depending on what part of the world you're in, moonshine, the main ingredients or whatever that was grown in that area. So around the Upper Cumberland, white corn was always prevalent. So any moonshine that came from this area was most likely going to be made using white corn. And so we just took a basic recipe and kind of put our own twist on it until we found something that we liked.
That's awesome. And to go back to when you and your family were doing it originally, what was running moonshine like back when y'all were doing it?
Well, it wasn't as much like what you see on TV. A lot of that's glorified and made Hollywood like, but it was you definitely had to be careful what you did, but it wasn't as bad as people make it out to be.
Right. No, no running. Duke boys running from the law and all that. But
We weren't jumping in your bridges or anything like
good, good. I'm glad. Um, Getting back to the actual moonshine itself there, and you hinted at it a little bit, but on the website you talk a lot about the process. You say we make old-fashioned moonshine using a traditional copper still with non-GMO white corn and techniques that have been used for years. Talk about your process. How did you hone that in?
that. All right. So my technique and process was kind of put together from questioning a lot of the old timers and their techniques and the way that they did it, and a lot of self research, and then combining a lot of their techniques into my own and creating my own techniques. And then, so we still do it the old fashioned way. like you would down at the creek. So both of our stills that we have, Big Bertha and Little Lincoln, they can both be taken down to a creek and ran the same exact way that we run it in the distillery. There's no computers hooked up to them, anything like that. I use natural gas to heat them because we have natural gas there, but I had it on propane before, so you could pack a propane tank into the woods with you and use it, or you could use wood fire if you felt inclined to do so. But so we, a lot of people come toward the distillery and they see that pot still sitting there and they're just amazed because it looks like something you would see down by the creek because it is something that you would see down by the creek. So
Yeah, I love it. Where did the still come from?
it was hand built. So that's one thing about our distillery too. We build our own equipment. So there's not many places that you can go that have stills that they made themselves or that they can even take out of the building and operate. A lot of them's bolted down to the ground. They're computer controlled, all electronic. And so when their power goes out, they're done distilling for the day. Whereas ours, the power goes out, I keep running and I just wait for the power to come back on because didn't necessarily have power down at the creek when we were running, so don't necessarily need it. But it's nice to have.
When I was there, you were, I think you said you were malting the corn. It was on the floor. You were drying it out. Even down to that process is kind of a handmade thing.
Right. So a lot of people that come in too, they've either dabbled in it at home or they're done beer or maybe even people that own other distilleries or own breweries, they come in and they see the malted corn laying there. So the malted corn is just white corn that was locally grown for us. We try to source everything as locally as possible when possible. But I'll take that corn and actually put it through the germination process. So I'm pretty much beginning the corn's life into becoming the corn stalk. But I only let it grow for about 3.5, 4 days. So it'll actually begin sprouting, germinating as they call it. And whenever you germinate corn, you'll create enzymes that actually will convert starches and carbs into sugar. And so once it sprouts out enough to where it's usable for me, I'll spread it out, let it air dry. That way I can grind it up into a powder and store it for a long period of time if need be. But when we add that malted corn into our mash, it begins breaking down all the starches and carbs and converting them into sugar. And then we utilize the natural yeast that's in the air to begin the fermentation process. So that's the way the old timers did it before store bought, man made, engineered yeast was even thought of. That's the same way we still do it today.
What kind of products do you offer? What's the most popular, and what's your favorite?
So, of course, we offer our traditional 110 proof sour mash moonshine. That's the same stuff that we sold when we were illegal. And a lot of people come in and they try it and they'll taste it and they'll be like, "This tastes just like the illegal stuff." I'm like, "Well, it's because it is. We just pay taxes on it now. Got the permits to do it. Nothing about our recipe changed whatsoever. The stills are still exactly the same. I'm still the same. So
Yeah.
same product. But so we've got the clear, and then I believe we've got 20 different flavored moonshines now. So they're a lower proof. They're usually between 40 and 50 proof. And I mean, you have anything from cinnamon roll, of course, apple pie, root beer, blackberry, just all different types of flavor. Pretty much a flavor for anybody's palate that comes in. But one of our biggest sellers out of the flavors is actually our dill pickle moonshine, which was quite surprising. But when you mix the moonshine in with the dill pickle juice, it kind of counteracts any burn in the alcohol. So it just tastes like dill pickle juice, but there's alcohol in it and you don't know it. So it becomes dangerous at that point because it'll sneak up on you.
It'll just sneak right up on you there. One kind of surprising thing that you mentioned while we were in there was that you were on the Discovery Channel show called Master Distillers, and it's almost like a cooking competition show. It was you and two other competitors in there. Y'all made some different moonshine. The judges tasted it and picked a winner. Well, what was that experience like?
It was definitely different because usually when I'm running the still, I mean, I'm not timed on it. I'm just leisurely going at my own pace, doing whatever I got to do. So it's definitely a lot different when you got a lot of eyes and cameras on you. It definitely changes things up a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt. And the pressure, I imagine, is just a little bit higher too. So I looked up the episode. It was called Finger Lickin' Shine, and you were telling me that y'all had to make a savory moonshine. Is that right?
Yep. So they for that episode. Like you said, it was a savory spirit episode,
Okay.
so they left it up to us as to what we wanted to make, and we had to come up with something savory. And savory is void of sweetness or spicy. So I started thinking of different things because savory spirits is kind of a new thing in the spirits world. I'm like, well, what do I make? Like a T-bone steak moonshine? I'm like, I'm not sure what was really going to be savory that would turn out good for a spirit. And then, like I said, I grew up in Nashville for half my life, and once I got to thinking about it, I was like, well, Nashville hot chicken, that's savory. But once that came into my head, it would not leave my head. So I was
Yeah.
like, guess I'm making some Nashville hot chicken shine. So that's what I did on the episode. I actually cooked chicken in the pot of the steel and the thump keg. So I kind of did it pachuga style, as you they would say in Mexico. So when they make mezcal de pachuga, they actually hang meat in the pot and distill the meat with the spirit as they're running. So the juices from the meat will actually drip and get infused into the alcohol coming over. So that's how I got my chicken flavor into it. And then in the thumper, I had it loaded with other ingredients you'd find in a traditional hot chicken recipe, like cayenne pepper, honey, brown sugar, things like that. Those actually got infused into the alcohol vapors as well.
So how'd you end up on the show?
So I ended up coming in second place on the show.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic. You've been on both sides of it being illegal and legal. How have just regular consumers' minds, how's people's minds changed on moonshine since it became legal?
Well, a lot of people think that just because it's a store bought moonshine that it's not the real thing, and that's partly to blame because of other companies and distilleries trying to pass things off as moonshine and take advantage of the popularity of it. And people try their product and they're like, no, this isn't moonshine. It kind of give it a bad name. So now a lot of us smaller places, like our mom and pop distilleries, are having to resell moonshine to people because they've gotten this bad taste in their
Hmm.
brain, and they're like, nope, I've tried moonshine, I don't like it. And we're like, well, you got to try the real stuff. And usually if you can convince them to try it, then you can convince them to change their mind. They're like, oh, this stuff's actually good.
Yeah. Moonshine is sort of it's kind of a revered art, I think, in Tennessee. It's definitely part of our culture. What does it mean to you to be a moonshiner in Tennessee?
To me, I mean, being able to make it the way that I do and actually make a career out of it's pretty nice. It'd be hard to find another job where it's a requirement to drink on the job every day.
Right.
But I like being able to have people come into the distillery and teach them about the fermentation process, and they can actually stand there and watch the still running and see how it actually works and kind of keep that history and the legend of it alive, because a lot of people, yeah, they hear about it or they may see something on TV, but they don't ever have the opportunity to actually see it being made or even learn enough about it to understand it. So the fact that we're able to keep it alive and keep it going, it's a pretty good feeling.
Yeah.
And of course, all the history that's around here, everybody that comes in, either their grandpa made it or their grandpa and grandma were bootleggers. Somebody, they always have a story about it, and so we like to have them write those stories down and send them to us so we can preserve the history of it. Because a lot of those stories, once people pass away, then those stories are gone and lost forever.
I know a lot of folks are finding Gainesboro and finding Jackson County through Roaring River Distillery. That's got to feel pretty good to attract folks up there and bring folks into your hometown.
Yeah, it definitely helped being on the national TV because the day after it aired, we had people coming in that had just saw me on TV the night before, and they didn't even know that we were there. And right after it aired, the Chamber of Commerce page, the traffic counter on it went, it just skyrocketed, and they couldn't figure out why, or they didn't really know the reason why. And we're like, well, maybe somebody in town was just on national TV. I don't know. Might be a possibility.
Could be. I'm not quite sure. We'll have to figure that out later. What's it like having a family business?
It's great being able to work with family every day because it's just me, my mom, my dad, and of course my girlfriend Lisa comes in and helps whenever we need help, and she's got the time too. But a lot of people they spend their week working, and then hope that they get to see their family on the weekend, whereas I get to see mine every day and work right beside them. Then, of course, we won the medals the past 2 years at the U.S. Open Spirits Championship. So 2 years ago, we won gold for our cinnamon roll moonshine, and then our barrel aged moonshine won bronze. And then last year, our cinnamon roll took silver, and our mint condition moonshine took bronze in their categories, and then our barrel aged took bronze again in its category. So to be able to work with family and be able to tell people, yeah, our family's got award-winning liquor, it's pretty good feeling.
That's not bad. Absolutely. Well, folks, Chad, thanks so much for being on the show. Folks, this is Chad Hunt. He's the master distiller at Roaring River Distillery in Gainesboro, Tennessee. You can find him online everywhere. Look him up. Go visit Jackson County. You won't be disappointed. Chad, thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank y'all so much for listening to this episode of State and Beal. Head out to Gainesboro sometime and say hey to Chad for me. He'd likely be alright to show you around the still and explain how he makes good old-fashioned moonshine, the same way it was made back when it was illegal. You can find links to the distillery in the show notes. And if you're heading to Gainesboro, let me give you some restaurant recommendations for your visit. When we were there, we ate at the Stolen Coin. It's right on the square. It has some American fare, but it really specializes in Cajun Creole flavors, like you'd find in New Orleans. I had the gumbo, and I will vouch for the Stolen Coin. Also on the square is Bull and Thistle. We didn't eat there, but it looked amazing. Their website says, "Our pub is a revolving celebration of Celtic and Southern cuisine." The menu features something called curds and puckers, look like fried cheese curds, yum. A Dickel barbecue burger, and fish and chips, of course. Thanks one more time to Justin Amaral and Life in Groove Land for sharing your music today. You'll find links to their music in the show notes and on social media. And stick around to listen to the rest of Be Thou My Vision after I'm done jawing on here. All right, that'll do it for this episode. Thanks again. We'll see you back here in Tennessee next week for more State and Beal. Bye, y'all.